Have you ever wondered why so many of history's greatest inventions are credited to men when women did the actual work? Today, we're talking about how Zootopia 2 hides one of the most infuriating truths about human progress inside a movie, about talking animals and animated crimes. When Zootopia 2 opens, we're introduced to Gary DeSnake, a pit viper on a mission to uncover the truth about his family's past. But the real story belongs to his grandmother, Agnes DeSnake. She had a brilliant idea that came from pure altruism. Create weather walls that would allow animals from different climates to live together in the same city. Her invention was born from a desire to bridge divides and let creatures coexist peacefully. But then a wealthy male lynx named Ebenezer promised to partner with her on the project. What happened next feels less like a historical accident and more like a deliberate erasure designed to benefit one man at the expense of an entire species. Ebenezer stole Agnes's idea, murdered a maid who tried to stop him, and blamed the crime on Agnes herself. He then took full credit for the weather walls while framing all snakes as dangerous criminals. For generations, the Lynxley family built an empire on this foundational lie, all while Agnes disappeared from history entirely. This plot point is more than just a crime story or a simple villain backstory. It's a perfect illustration of something historians call the Matilda Effect, a concept that explains how women's contributions get systematically erased from the historical record. The term emerged in the 1990s to describe a phenomenon that's been happening for centuries: men taking credit for women's ideas and discoveries. It's named after Matilda Joslyn Gage, a 19th century feminist who documented exactly how women inventors and scientists were systematically removed from the narrative. But the real examples are what make your skin crawl. Elizabeth Magie invented a game about property and wealth in the early 1900s, but Charles Darrow took her concept, added some minor tweaks, and sold it as Monopoly. He became a millionaire and lived the bootstrap dream. Magie got $500. Margaret Knight designed a machine that could fold and form paper bags, then watched a man named Charles Annan steal her patent. Jocelyn Bell Burnell discovered pulsars, one of the most significant astronomical findings of the 20th century, but her advisor and his colleague won the Nobel Prize, while her name was quietly left out of the announcement entirely. These aren't isolated incidents or unfortunate coincidences. They're part of a pattern so consistent, so ingrained in how we tell history, that we barely notice when it happens anymore. What makes Zootopia 2's version particularly clever is how it shows us the real cost of this theft. Agnes didn't just lose credit for her invention. She lost her freedom, her reputation, her entire identity within society. But worse than her individual tragedy is what happened to an entire species because of one man's greed and ambition. The Lynxley family used Agnes's exclusion to justify the systematic persecution of every snake and reptile in Zootopia. They spread misinformation, stoked fear among the population, and eventually pushed reptiles out of their homes and neighborhoods entirely. One woman's erasure became a template for systemic oppression that lasted for generations. The movie doesn't treat this as a minor plot detail or a footnote to the main story. Gary's entire journey exists because his grandmother's idea was stolen and his family was destroyed. He has to spend the whole film uncovering what should have been celebrated from the very start. The filmmakers seem to understand that this resonates beyond the fictional world of Zootopia. They're tapping into something that feels uncomfortably real and relevant. In our actual history, how many inventions, scientific breakthroughs, and creative works have been attributed to men when women did the foundational thinking and labor? How much of our world was built on women's ideas that got signed with someone else's name? The scariest part isn't even the theft itself. It's how easily a lie becomes truth when someone in power tells it loudly and repeatedly enough. Ebenezer didn't just steal an invention, he rewrote history entirely. He made snakes into villains in the collective memory of Zootopia. He transformed his crime into mythology that everyone believed. His descendants benefited from that lie for decades, without ever having to prove their superiority. They just had to keep repeating the narrative they'd inherited. What's refreshing about how the film handles this is that it doesn't oversimplify the issue into good versus evil. This isn't a story where one good person defeats evil and everything magically goes back to normal. The damage has been done. Entire communities have been shaped by false narratives. Judy has to genuinely reckon with how her own beliefs about reptiles were shaped by propaganda she never questioned. The film asks us to think about institutional problems, how systems that began as one person's lie calcify into cultural assumptions. That's genuinely sophisticated territory for an animated family movie. This is Ladies First, watching women in movies. Here, we empower women by reviewing and discussing films that highlight their stories, struggles, and achievements. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments.